Welcome back, guys, to Fish Scales and Shrimp Tails. So today we're going to carry on with our tank update slash tank type and what to watch for, what to know. So today we're going to talk about the Sunkist cherry shrimp tank. This tank is now about 3 months old approximately. And this tank has entered what I would call a stable tank. This is not a mature tank. This is not a tank that is in transition. This is a tank that I would refer to as a stable tank. It's 3 months old now. It's starting to develop an ecosystem. It's starting to develop some of the microbiology. If you look around the tank, you'll see every now and then you'll see some of that microbiology in action. You'll see some copepods dart around the water. I did get a hydra in here recently, which a little bit scared the crap out of me. That's the one thing I don't really want in a natural aquarium if I can at all avoid it. I did only see one, and I just grabbed some hydrogen peroxide and sort of squeezed it with one of these little pipettes that you get sometimes when you're doing shrimp brine shrimp breeding, and just sort of squeeze the hydrogen peroxide on top of it, and that seemed to kill it off. I haven't seen any in here for the last couple of weeks since I saw that one. I'd love to think it was just that one, but that's not usually how hydra works, right? So let's zoom out a little bit. We'll talk about the tank, and then we'll talk about what it means to be sort of a stable tank, in my opinion, anyways. So I want you guys to see now. I know I said I was going to cut this back in the last video and replant it, and I just didn't get to it, guys. So that is the growth that I've got out of those stalks that I put in, all those little, 1/2 inch or 1 inch stalks that I stuck on the ground. That's the growth that I've got in 3 months. I haven't clipped that down at all. I am going to. You can see some of the bottom ones are getting a little leggy looking, and they're starting to shoot off of the growth at the top. So we're going to clip that down at some point in the near future and replant the tops in there and just make that a slightly thicker red forest. Maybe we'll wrap it around into the back a little bit over here somewhere. I'm not sure yet where we're going to go with it. Unfortunately, you guys know this is my problem child. No, I have not had any buried shrimp in this tank. I have done a couple of things since getting these to try and encourage breeding. Full disclosure, I did do a 25% water change on this tank probably a couple of weeks, 3 weeks or so ago. Not because there were any parameter issues or any issues with the tank or its stability. I was purely trying to encourage them to molt and thereby encourage them to breed. I believe I failed on both counts. I think I did see 1 or 2 molts in this tank in the last couple of weeks, but that was it, and I still haven't seen any that are buried. I also tried adding some to this tank. I think we went over that in one of the last videos, and that has not yielded any results either. I really have no idea what is going on and why they won't breed. I'm naturally I'm naturally suspect at this point. I'm starting to wonder if somehow something wasn't done to them or fed to them to make them infertile before I got them. I know it sounds crazy, guys, but they are the only shrimp I own in any tank that is not breeding. I have shrimp in a tank upstairs with an extremely violent betta that we've called Ninja. He's almost decimated that colony in its entirety, and they are still breeding. nothing in this tank. And water, everything in this tank that you can test, I've tested, and it's all within expected norms, and I got nothing. So I'm gonna let this play out for a while. These are my favorite shrimp. These are the ones I really wanted to breed. So I'm gonna let this play out for a while. If any of you have any idea what's going on, please put it down in the comments. I'd love to have other opinions. I haven't got a clue, but that's not what we're here to talk about. So what is a stable, oh, sorry about that, guys. So what is a stable tank, or what do I qualify as a stable tank? So a stable tank is a tank that's been set up for a period of time, and that period of time is going to change for everybody based on all kinds of variables. How much you feed it, how much water is in it, how much dirt you put in it, how many fish are in it, how many plants, etc., 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 etc. A stable tank is a tank that requires much less of your attention and intervention. Now, does this tank have its issues? It has a couple issues that are a tiny little bit concerning right now. Is it healthy? Absolutely. The plants are growing, the fish are happy, they're pretty comfortable, there's no signs of real stress, the shrimp are happy, they look good, the fish don't jump and bolt every time I get up in front of the tank. You know, we don't have to feed it on super regular, like we're not at it every day. Tank sort of taking care of itself, plant materials breaking down, snails are eating it, all that good stuff. There's the beginning of an ecosystem starting to develop. You'll notice when the fish swim by close to the bottom of the tank, every now and then they'll kick up a little bit of mulm. That's sort of what to expect in a natural tank. That's sort of healthy. Are there problems? Sure. All these rocks that are here. So if you remember, I did this with the intent of putting some hillstream louches in here for breeding. That's why we have all those flat rocks with the spaces underneath. I haven't got to that stage yet. My local pet stores here, they did get some hillstream louches in, but they were a mixed bag. And it concerns me. I wanted a specific type of hillstream louch. I wanted a reticulated. And they had them all mixed together, and they came all mixed together in one tank. I want to stick to a more pure strain. I don't want a mixed bag. I don't want to make things more difficult than necessary for breeding. And to be honest, I'd like this tank to get a little bit more established before I start adding more of a bio load to it. And I'm not just talking about, you know, the 3 or 4 or 6 hillstream I'm going to add to it. I'm talking about if I do successfully breed them and they have babies, that's going to add a new bio load on this tank that I don't believe it's quite prepared for yet. It's just reached that sort of stable tank spot. I wouldn't call this a balanced tank. I would call it stable. I do have algae growth right now on all these rocks. The snails are taking care of that, but there are more snails in here than I'd like to see. A lot of them are very small. They probably won't reach adulthood. I don't think there's enough food material in here for them to eat to get there. But it's a sign that the tank hasn't fully developed its ecosystem. Some of the plants in the corners over here have got some pinholes in them. Maybe we can zoom in on that and I'll show you what that looks like right now. This is just something I noticed the other day, to be perfectly honest. So some of these bottom leaves, you see, there's a couple pinholes on them. Now, in the cherry shrimp tank, those pinholes were tiny and it very much reminded me of a potassium deficiency. This one I'm not entirely sure about. The holes are a little bit larger and there aren't as many of them. I don't have a plant chart in front of me, so I can't give you any idea what it is. I'll have to look it up. But there's something going on there that's not quite reached a good stability for that end of it. We're gonna have to chop some of this down and replant it. Our ground cover is starting to come in. It's starting to trail along, find its way through the rocks and under the rocks. So it is a stable tank. It requires very little intervention on my part. I did just take one of the sponges off of that filter and rinse it out. Actually, I did that on all my tanks, to be fair. That's just a memory thing for me, so I know when it was last done instead of keeping track of each individual tank. I just took one of the sponges off because it's a double sponge system and because it has that basket underneath of the little Eheim balls or whatever you decide to put in here. So that maintains a biological bacteria in them. So I just took one of the sponge filters off, rinsed it off into some cold water, squeezed out some of the biological material, and put it back. And that leaves me all the little bio balls in the bottom with the bacteria, and the other sponge that will still have bacteria on it as well. So healthy thing to do every now and then, and it's probably a good way to do it, just sort of rotate between one sponge to the next. So how do I know that we're in a stable position right now? Well, for me, I look at a few things. I have almost no algae growth, a little bit. I have very slow, steady floaters that grow. You'll see that there are some, I had some red root floaters in here. I just don't have a lot of luck with those, so I've gone back to some water wisteria. And you'll see, unlike my previous tanks, these don't have these monstrous roots. They haven't got to huge sizes because there isn't a high level of nutrition in the water. The tank is finding a stability between plant growth and nutrition that is in the soil and in the water. We don't fertilize these tanks. So the plants are taking that nutrient up, cycling it into their leaves and plant growth. No ammonia, none of that stuff. I don't even check tanks really anymore for that once they reach this stage. So it's very stable. Growth is good and steady, solid. It's not too fast. It's not crazy slow. Floaters are doing okay, but they're not taking over the tank. Fish are happy, healthy. I do see every now and then what looks like it might be breeding activity in here. It's not as pronounced as other tanks are, but this tank hasn't been established as long as the other tanks. There's no breeding activity happening in the blue tank, but that's to be expected. It's a transitional tank. It's a new tank. This might be breeding behavior, but it might not be. I think so. Kind of looks like it. So we know that the fish are happy. The shrimp are healthy. We're not having a lot of die-offs in here. No fish have died. I did lose a mystery snail. I'm not sure what's going on with my mystery snails. I've lost a few of them now. I suspect it's an issue with there not being enough food material for them in this tank. Mystery snails get to be a good size, and if you don't have a lot of rotten vegetation in the bottom of your tank for them to chew on, that might be the problem, although I would think the dead oak leaves would have been enough. But what do I know? So that's kind of how I view a stable tank. It requires a lot less intervention. You've got your hands around any algae issues that you might have had before. You don't have any major blooms of bacteria or algae. Your filtration seems to be working well. You've got some steady plant growth. Maybe you have the odd thing or two that requires a little bit of your intervention from time to time, but nothing, super serious or super drastic. I am happy with the plant growth. I am happy with the way this tank is starting to develop. I do think as it continues to grow, and if they ever do decide to breed, I am going to have to add more plants to it, but I'm hoping that the cuttings I take off of the ones that are in here will be sufficient for that. I guess time will tell. Anyhow, guys, that's how things are going in the Sunkist tank. Things are looking pretty good. Like I said, no real issues. Tank is pretty stable. All the fish seem to be pretty healthy. See that? Sometimes these two, it does look like breeding behavior, and I'm not 100% sure, but it fakes me out every now and then. I don't know if they're just mucking around or not, but every now and then it does look suspiciously like breeding behavior, although I haven't seen any eggs in here. So yeah, happy, healthy tank. Plant growth is good. Seems to be pretty stable. Like I said, I did do a water change on this tank, but only to try and encourage a molt and some breeding behavior. Didn't really have the impact I was looking for, so scratch that. Probably won't do that again. It's just not something I find necessary to do with any kind of frequency at all, guys. I hope you enjoyed that video. I hope it teaches you something. I hope you start to recognize as your tank matures and enters that sort of stable phase where you can sort of back away from it a little bit more and just sort of let the ecology of that tank and the micro microfauna in your tank start to take over and do all those jobs that you were doing yourself. They'll start to do it for you. Hope you enjoyed it, guys. We'll talk to you in the next one.